So anyway, Hitler assumes control of the party, and he's going to rename it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazi Party, in 1921. And so the Nazis are going to start to become a mass political movement. And they're going to have a newspaper, they're going to have uniforms, kind of start sounding like a military, and then they're going to form their own military or their own militia. And they're going to call themselves the Stormtroopers. And yes, George Lucas does get a lot of his Star Wars references from Nazi Germany. I mean, Stormtroopers, whatever. Anyway, Hollywood's not original. Hitler is a pretty effective orator. I mean, like, his speeches aren't necessarily that great, but he does actually stir the crowd. And when he stirs the crowd, it's normally because he's blaming people for everybody else's problems. But the stormtroopers are meant to protect the program, defend the party, and break up meetings of any other political parties. So the stormtroopers, they storm into other people's political party rallies, and they break up the other political parties. And then Hitler gives his little speeches. And so he is pretty effective. I mean, he does rile a crowd up to whatever he wants. He is pretty overconfident, which is good for us when World War II actually starts. So an overconfident Hitler is going to attempt an armed uprising against the government. And so he's going to actually try and rebel against the Weimar Republic in 1923, and it's called the Beer Hall. This is just where they meet. And so he gets sent to prison. And like everybody, when they go to prison, they do write books. And so Hitler is going to write a book. And so by 1923, you had looked at about 55,000 members in the Nazi Party. And so when Hitler does try and overthrow the government, the republic that we had established after World War I in Germany, I mean, he actually has a lot of people who are like, yay, overthrow it. And then when he's in prison, he writes a book called Mein Kampf. And basically the book is just about Hitler's struggles with life. And he's got a lot of struggles. He's got a lot of issues, why he's in prison. And so why he's in prison, he's going to write this book. And it's a mixture of nationalism. Nationalism, remember the extreme pride. In the book, he basically sets out his World War II vision. I mean, he's not saying World War II. He's saying, in the next war, Germany needs to do a couple things. No more two-front wars. So let's not fight Russia and France at the same time like they had done in World War I. So he says that's bad. We can't divide the army. Now, luckily for us, he will do just that. So it will be a little bit easier to defeat him in World War II. So even though he lays out this advice, he never takes it. He's also going to say that we, the German people, are a great people, and we need to, create the new Germany. And it's those other people that are the problem. And so he comes across with a very anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish sentiment. Now remember, this is actually an old belief in Europe. It's not just Germany that's anti-Semitic. You have a lot of anti-Semitism throughout the world. Even here in the United States, there are a lot of Americans who are anti-Semitic. There are a lot of people in America that are pro-Nazi party during this time period, during the 1920s and during the 1930s. I mean, even when World War II actually starts and the U.S. gets involved, these groups are still pro-Hitler. They just, they don't advertise it anymore. And so he sets out to create this master race. In the book, he talks about the Aryan race, which is the master race. And he says that all Germans need living space. And what it basically means is if Germany needs living space, the only way to conquer, or the only way to accomplish that goal, is to conquer other countries. And so he's going to start a policy of imperialism, Germany conquering other places. And he believes in a social Darwinist view of the world, survival of the fittest. So those of you that have had U.S. history, you looked at social Darwinism when you looked at Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, J.P. Morgan. And even if you haven't had U.S. history and you watch the History Channel, they did that with the men who built America. And so social Darwinism basically says survival of the fittest applied to the business world. And so Hitler's going to take this and he's going to apply it in his Mein Kampf, his struggles. So social Darwinism whoever is the fittest race is going to be the race that rules the world. And he believes that the Aryan race is the master race. Um, at least this is what the guy thinks. Now remember, the Aryans aren't really white. They're not blonde or blue-eyed, but this is what he calls the Aryan race. And Hitler is going to conclude that a violent revolution would not succeed. So mass party instead all over Germany. So he wants to go ahead and just do a political revolution versus a violent revolution in Germany. He realized that the Nazis would have to take power through a constitutional means. So Hitler realizes that he can't just do an overthrow of the government. He needs to get voted into the government. And that's how he'll go ahead and lead his plan for the world and for the war. Because he definitely is planning a war, because he wants to do some living space. He believes in survival of the fittest applied to the world. And he believes in eliminating Jews because he believes that they are conquering the world, which they're not, but that's what he thinks. And it's just because, remember, the Jewish people are just such a small portion of the population that they become kind of an easy scapegoat in history. And a lot of Germans really did have these anti-Semitic feelings anyway, so Hitler's just kind of hitting up on an old belief. By 1929, the Nazis had actually formed a national political party. They were organized, and Hitler is kind of coming into power. So the rise to power. So by 1932, the Nazi Party had 800,000 members, and it was the largest party in the Reichstag. And this is just their parliament, the German parliament, their government. And so what you see is that there is a Great Depression here in the United States. The United States had given Germany this thing called the Dawes Plan. And the Dawes Plan is the U.S. loans. And we did this in 1923 when Germany fails to make good on the reparation payments to France and Britain, who are failing to pay the United States the money that they owed us from World War I. So the U.S. loans them money, a plan, right, to make the German economy kind of rebound. It's not going to happen. But in 1929, October 29, 1929, when the great stock market crash happens here in the United States, the U.S. goes through a horrible depression. And because the U.S. goes through a depression, so do all the other countries too. Now, they've been already hurting since the 1920s, but in 1929, when the U.S. goes through ours, we kind of recall all these loans, and we're not buying anybody's stuff. They're not buying our stuff, and the world just keeps going into this downward spiral for this Great Depression. The German economy is even worse. And so when Hitler comes into power, it really is coming into power because there is a huge economic opportunity that's there. It's like a huge gift that's packaged and wrapped just for him. And he knows exactly what to say to the German people to get them to vote him in. So the right-wing elites are going to believe that Hitler authoritarianism is going to save them from a communist takeover. They believe that Hitler is like their savior, and he's promising some sort of economic relief. And you have to understand that the Germans, some of them, they didn't have jobs. They couldn't remember the last time they had a job. And you have a lot of young men who can't get jobs, who want to work, and they've been turning the crime. The crime rate is crazy in Germany. And so when he says, hey, I've got a solution to our problems, I want to make us great again, you know, people listen to it. And he's the only one out there that's actually saying this. So it doesn't matter what or who is saying it. If someone is saying that they're going to help you and you can't remember the last time you had a job, people listen to it. It doesn't matter what the message is. It doesn't even matter if they're saying, you know, let's kill the Jews to get our economy back, which is exactly what Hitler's kind of saying. I mean, he's just not necessarily saying it, you know, in those terms. I mean, he's got it hidden in his speeches. It's there. It's the hate, the anger, the rage towards people who are different. And so when he comes into power, he really is coming into power with a majority of people voting him in. So Hitler becomes the chancellor in January 1933. He's appointed by President Hindenburg. So Hindenburg was kind of an old monarchist himself anyway. He had worked under the Kaiser. He really didn't know how to form a true republic. And so Hindenburg, really under a lot of pressure, is going to go ahead and have Hitler coming in. And so the right-wing elites, These are your industrial leaders, your aristocrats, your military, your bureaucrats, and so Hindenburg feels pressured to do this. The Enabling Acts in March 1933, Hitler is going to be given the power to dispense with constitutional forms for 4 years and rule as a dictator. So this means that he has absolute control. So the Constitution is just, it's on the back burner, it's there, we'll check it every once in a while, but he really gets to rule as a dictator for 4 years. He's going to do civil service exams, just like you have with like the Chinese, and he's going to purge any Jews and any Democrats in his civil service. So all the government workers are not going to be allowed to continue to work under this new government. Anyone that's Jewish descent, anybody that's a Democrat, they get thrown out. Concentration camps are going to start getting established, and this is going to be for any enemy of the Nazi state. So anybody that's an enemy of Germany is going to go to the concentration camps. That means more than Jewish people. I mean, it means anybody that he considers an enemy. So if you were a German and you were part of this, master Aryan race, and you were like, Adolf, I think you're wrong, you went to the camps. And he's going to do trade unions, and other political parties are going to be abolished. Even though, like the Nazis are like these workers, they're going to abolish trade unions and other political parties because they see that trade unions are communists, or at least they're communists in theory. It's workers telling the man what they can and can't do. So, that's struggle. Hindenburg is going to die in August 1934, and Hitler now is going to become the sole leader of this new Germany that he is establishing. And he is going to be called the Führer, or the leader. Look at that, looks Fury, Furies, right? Greek mythology. And the oath of loyalty to Hitler is required. This isn't odd for these kind of states, that they require you to take an oath of allegiance to their leader. And, of course you have to take it or you die. So the Nazi state 1933 to 1939, the goal is to establish a total state, an Aryan racial state to dominate Europe and beyond. Beyond is the scary part. He wants to do it for 1,000 years, right? So like he wants to take over Germany, then he wants to take over all of Europe, then he wants to take over the United States. And now America is not real concerned about that because America is a neutral or isolated country during this time period. Matter of fact, America will keep issuing neutrality acts to tell the rest of the world, we don't want any part of you. We have mass demonstrations that are going on in Germany, particularly like the Nuremberg rallies, and these are symbolic and they're very enthusiastic. They get the crowd pumped up and cheered, and there's considerable administrative chaos during Hitler's state. And it's because Hitler's an absolute ruler, and that means he gets final say on all decisions. So if you wanted to do anything, you had to ring up Hitler, get a hold of him, and then he would give you the okay or no, it's not okay. Which is going to be great for the military because it allows the United States and the Allies to go ahead and defeat Hitler. Because even his generals aren't given that much power on the actual battlefields. So if they wanted to actually do a counterattack, they got to go ahead and get a hold of the Führer and get his approval before they actually start fighting back, which is just perfect because what it means is that they can't do anything without it being considered treason. So they have to always get the little Führer's approval for everything. That's great for America. So the use of public work projects for pump priming, and pump priming is just like FDR, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, did to the U.S. economy. He does public buildings, he does public works, construction projects. So put a little bit of money into the economy, see if it gets up and running. And Hitler is going to put a little bit of money into the economy when it comes to like war machines. So he'll go ahead and he'll start building up the factories again. He rearms, so rearmament of the German military, and that was really going to solve, that really did solve a lot of their economic issues in Germany. And he is going to convince a lot of Germans to accept this new government because the economy does start going, it does start actually running. And the SS is going to be put under Himmler, who is going to control all police forces. And this guy believes in the secret police, and he believes in using terror tactics to enforce his policy. So murder and concentration camps are going to be Himmler's thing. So if you're an enemy of the Nazi state, that's where you would go. You would go to the concentration camps, and he does death squads as well.